How many lives have been forever tainted by false accusations? Dive into the shadows of a past where innocent young black men faced life-altering consequences based solely on the words of white women, or these white women accused these young black men and ruined their lives. In March 1931, a group of young black men, ranging from ages 12 to 19, boarded a train bound for Scottsboro, Alabama. Little did they know that this journey would thrust them into the heart of a legal maelstrom that would span years. Among them were Haywood Patterson, Clarence Norris, Olin Montgomery, and others. As fate would have it, their lives would become entwined with those of two white women, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates. The sequence of events that followed the train ride set the stage for a tragedy of epic proportions. Victoria Price and Ruby Bates were also on the train, and they soon claimed that a group of black men had assaulted and raped them. These accusations sent shockwaves through society and ignited a firestorm of prejudice and hatred. The women's testimonies would serve as the catalyst for a series of trials that would expose the deep-seated racial biases of the time. The trials began amidst an atmosphere charged with hostility, as an all-white jury assembled to pass judgment on the fate of the accused. The defense faced an uphill battle, with an unfair legal system and societal prejudices stacked against them. It was a time when the voices of black defendants were drowned out by the clamor of injustice and the fervor of racial hatred. As the trials unfolded, it became painfully clear that the proceedings were far from impartial. The defense team, led by the prominent attorney Samuel Leibowitz, encountered numerous roadblocks in their quest for justice. They faced hostile witnesses, skewed testimony, and a judicial system that seemed predisposed to pronounce guilt based solely on the color of the defendant's skin. Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, the accusers, became central figures in the courtroom drama. Price's testimony, rife with inconsistencies, painted a vivid picture of racial prejudice and manipulation. Bates, who eventually recanted her initial statement, revealed the extent to which the truth had been distorted by societal pressures and fear of retribution. Whenever history has twisted the truth, the results have been staggering. The same occurred here. Curious to uncover how? Stay with us until the end of the video to find out. As the trials continued, it became evident that the outcome was predetermined by a system riddled with racial bias. The very idea of young black men being accused by white women was enough to incite outrage and fuel the flames of prejudice. The notion of interracial sexual assault was used as a tool to perpetuate racial divides and maintain the status quo. As the Scottsboro boys' trials unfolded, it became painfully apparent that the scales of justice were heavily tipped against them. The defense team, led by Samuel Leibowitz, encountered numerous obstacles in their pursuit of a fair trial. The proceedings were marked by biased witnesses, questionable evidence, and a hostile atmosphere that sought to vilify the young black defendants. Leibowitz, a Jewish attorney from New York, faced not only the challenge of proving his client's innocence, but also the pervasive racial prejudices of the time. His presence in the courtroom was met with skepticism and resentment from the local community, who saw him as an outsider interfering in their affairs. Leibowitz's attempts to cross-examine witnesses and present a comprehensive defense were often met with resistance and obstruction. The central figures in the trial, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, were placed under the spotlight. Price's testimony was riddled with inconsistencies, revealing the extent to which her narrative had been shaped by societal pressures and the desire to conform to prevailing norms. Bates, who eventually recanted her initial accusation, further exposed the fragility of the case against the Scottsboro boys. The defense's struggle was exacerbated by the prevailing racial biases that permeate every aspect of the trial. The mere accusation of young black men assaulting white women was enough to evoke a visceral reaction from the all-white jury and the spectators present. This deeply ingrained prejudice cast a long shadow over the proceedings, making it difficult for the truth to emerge from the tangled web of lies and misconceptions. Despite Leibowitz's valiant efforts to present evidence that contradicted the accusations, the odds were stacked against the defendants. The courtroom itself became a battleground where racial tensions simmered and justice seemed elusive. The very act of cross-examining the accusers and challenging their narratives was met with disdain as the defense was forced to navigate a minefield of racial sensitivities. The trials of the Scottsboro boys left a lasting imprint on their lives, forever altering the trajectory of their futures. The aftermath of the accusations and the subsequent legal battles would become a stark reminder of the systemic racism and injustice deeply ingrained in American society. The verdicts of guilt handed down by the juries had profound consequences for the young black men. Haywood Patterson, despite escaping the death penalty, spent over a decade behind bars, his life forever marked by the stigma of the accusations. Clarence Norris, the only one sentenced to death, received a commuted sentence, yet the scars of his unjust conviction and imprisonment would continue to haunt him. The struggles faced by these young men extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom. Upon their release, they were met with a world that still viewed them through the lens of suspicion and prejudice. The label of Scottsboro Boys would follow them, casting a shadow over any attempts to reintegrate into society and rebuild their lives. The cases also exposed the deep fractures within the justice system and ignited a broader conversation about racial inequality. The blatant exclusion of African Americans from the jury pools highlighted the systemic biases that plagued the legal process. The fact that these young men were not given a fair trial was a harsh reminder of the power dynamics that perpetuated racial discrimination. The trials also raised questions about the credibility of accusations made by white women against black men. Victoria Price and Ruby Bates' testimony, marked by inconsistencies and ulterior motives, called into question the reliability of such accusations, particularly in a racially charged environment. The case underscored the potential for these accusations to be exploited for personal gain or to reinforce societal hierarchies. The media's role in perpetuating stereotypes and influencing public opinion was another facet of this tragic tale. Sensationalized headlines and inflammatory reporting contributed to the vilification of the accused, further deepening the divisions along racial lines. The narrative that emerged from the media coverage painted a skewed picture, one that reinforced preconceived notions and hardened existing prejudices. As we delve deeper into this narrative, it is important to remember that the trials of the Scottsboro Boys were not isolated incidents. They were emblematic of a larger pattern of racial discrimination and systemic injustice that persisted throughout the United States. The case exposed the underlying tensions that simmered beneath the surface of society and ignited a nationwide dialogue about the urgent need for change. The trials of the Scottsboro Boys highlighted the urgent need for legal reform. The blatant exclusion of African Americans from juries and the lack of adequate legal representation underscored the unequal treatment that black defendants faced in the courtrooms. These injustices served as a catalyst for change, inspiring lawyers and activists to challenge the discriminatory practices deeply embedded within the justice system. Prominent civil rights organizations, such as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NIAC, recognized the significance of the Scottsboro Boys cases. They seized the opportunity to shed light on the inherent racial bias in the criminal justice system. The case became a rallying point for advocates who sought to challenge the status quo and push for legal reforms that would guarantee fair trials for all, regardless of race. The legal battles that followed the initial trials were marked by intense scrutiny and public pressure. The United States Supreme Court's decision to reverse the convictions for a second time based on the exclusion of black jurors marked a crucial turning point. Chief Justice Charles Evans Huves's observation that excluding citizens from juries due to their race violated the Equal Protection Clause was a pivotal assertion that highlighted the need for systemic change. The retrials and subsequent pardons underscored the resilience of those who fought for justice. Despite facing numerous obstacles, the persistence of lawyers like Samuel Leibowitz and the unwavering support of civil rights advocates contributed to the eventual vindication of the Scottsboro Boys. The posthumous pardons in recent years serve as a reminder that justice can transcend time, even if it comes too late for those who suffered. The Scottsboro Boys cases also played a role in reshaping public opinion. The glaring injustices they endured ignited a national dialogue about racial prejudice and the need for social change. The media's coverage of the trials, combined with the tireless efforts of activists, helped to shine a light on the racial disparities deeply ingrained in American society. Are you also passionate about combating racial disparities? If so, share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels our drive to amplify the voices advocating for Black individuals.